Auston Matthews makes modern-day NHL history, scoring his 66th goal of the season. The Leafs could still technically finish the season with home ice advantage heading into the playoffs, and some interesting lineup decisions need to be made by Sheldon Keefe. All of that and more in this video. Welcome back to Leafs Digest. My name is Darius Domingues, and guys, we've noticed that about 80% of you watching our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor heading into the playoffs, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything Toronto Maple Leafs. We're going to come at you with some news videos. The Leafs are heading into the playoffs. We're going to have a bunch of stuff here on the channel that you're going to enjoy, and it's going to be a lot of fun. The Leafs are heading into the playoffs, and they look like a little bit of a different team this year, but one thing that isn't different is Auston Matthews. He's continuing his goal-scoring ways. But to touch on the game tonight very quickly, there are a lot of things to like. I mean, you beat up on a New Jersey Devils team that you should be beating up on. I think that's great. You have a ton of lineup changes, like Connor Timmins coming in for Ilya Lyubushkin, who struggled as of late. Nick Robertson and Noah Gregor were coming in for Connor Dewar and Ryan Reeves, both putting in good work. So, you know, on the second half of a back-to-back, nice to see those guys come back into the lineup. Joseph Woll starting in net with Martin Jones backing up. Samsonov stayed at home to rest up, which I think is a great idea. And I mean, the new additions into the lineup, it worked. Nick Robertson scores again. It seems like every time he's scratched and he comes back into the lineup, he scores. He's having a pretty good season considering his usage, which is not much at all. He has 25 points in 52 games so far this season, and he's making good use of his time on ice. And like I said, every time he's scratched, he seems to come back stronger and score a goal in that next game, which is great. Didn't like the goal allowed from the Benoit-McCabe pairing. The first Devils goal, didn't like that. But again, the rest of the game pretty solid. They continue to beat up and outshoot the beat up Devils, which you should. Bertuzzi, 2 goals in this game. He has 9 goals in his last 13 games. I know the last one was an empty netter, but still they all count. It doesn't matter, you know, how you get them, right? It matters how many, right? We need guys to score, and I think the second half he's really turned it on. We saw it with Boston last year. He turned it on in the playoffs, and it's a really good thing if you're a Leafs fan. So heading into the playoffs, he's heating up. Again, like I said, 9 goals in his last 13 games, 21 goals on the year. Was not looking that way. I remember we were talking about him with only 6 goals, and all of a sudden he has 21 goals, and he's put together a pretty good season, which is great. Gio scores seconds later after that as the insurance. There was a little weird thing with the Nylander goal. We'll braze over that. That's fine. And, you know, it would have been nice to see him score a goal, but that's fine. And then Bertuzzi gets the empty netter. They put the game away. Nice little win there for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And, you know, I did not mention one of the goal scorers, and that's because we're going to get to him right now. Auston Matthews has scored the most goals in a single season in the salary cap era. Take that in. Alex Ovechkin in a single season will never have more goals than Auston Matthews. Auston Matthews, 66 goals on the season. And again, this was before the game tonight. Tonight could be the night that he sets the record for most goals in a season in the salary cap era, and also ranks in the 98th percentile for defensive impact among forwards. He was literally designed in a lab to dominate the NHL. And if you look at these numbers and his advanced metrics and all that stuff, this guy's a stud. He scores at an unbelievable rate, a rate that we have not seen in the salary cap era. You would have to go back literally 30 years to find somebody who scored more goals than Auston Matthews at this point. And, well, I guess Mario Lemieux, which we'll get to in a second as well. It's not so much 30 years ago, but still putting together a very impressive season. And he's upped his defensive game. That was, you know, a criticism of his, you know, heading into the COVID seasons, and he's fixed that. It's a part of his game that he's put a lot of attention to, and man, he is a great center, one of the best players in the National Hockey League. And Auston Matthews becomes the 11th player in NHL history to score 66 goals in a season. His first, he's the first since Mario Lemieux 28 years ago, so it's close, almost 30 years, but that is impressive, man. That is super impressive. And Matthews now has goals in his last 6 games. He is on a mission to 70. And honestly, he slowed down a little bit. And I wasn't sure if he was going to get to 70, you know, somewhere in the area of 64, 65. I was like, okay, he might end up there, and that's nice. He needs 4 more goals. The Leafs have 4 more games left. He has 6 goals in his last 6 games. Listen, guys, he's scored for long periods of time in his career at a goal a game pace. I'm so used to saying point a game pace. A goal a game pace, and I think he can do it. I think he can get to 70. I think he's determined to do it, and it might just happen. The Devils were double teaming him a lot tonight, and we'll see how that kind of plays out the rest of the season, because as the season dwindles down and you're playing teams like Detroit, for example, I know they're fighting for a playoff spot, but maybe a little bit less skilled than the Leafs. Maybe he gets a goal against them. I'm not sure, because they're going to be desperate, right? So maybe they're not going to be covering him as much. Should be an interesting game. It's a very interesting time. And Auston Matthews is only the 11th player in NHL history to score 66 goals, joining Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Esposito, Bossy, McDonald, Curry, Nichols, Hall, Solani, and McGillney. Great company for Auston Matthews. He has set the league on fire this year, and his entire career, for that matter. Auston Matthews is everything for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, he has absolutely turned the franchise around, and there's only one thing left for him to do, I think. The individual awards are nice, and he might pick up a few more this offseason. I think he should pick up a few more this offseason, including perhaps a Hart Trophy. Well, he's definitely going to win the scoring race, the goal scoring race, that's for sure, the Maurice Richard Trophy. And, he's just been everything for this team. It's just so much fun to watch. Like, it's every game he scores. Every single game, it seems like he scores. And I mean, it's almost true. If he scores 70 goals, and I think he's on pace to play 81 games this season, that is an incredible, it's something we haven't seen in 30 years. It's really special. So that is a lot of fun. Auston Matthews, just a lot of fun to watch. Now, heading into the playoffs, things are very interesting for the Leafs. Do you want home ice? Or would it be better to start on the road? I think it could go either way for the Leafs. I think it's an interesting topic of conversation, because the way they're playing, they could end up with home ice. It is definitely possible. I mean, if you look at the NHL standings and how they shake up after tonight, the Leafs are gaining ground. It doesn't look like they're going to drop to the wild card at all at this point, which it seemed very possible. They still have a game in hand on the Florida Panthers, who are only 3 points ahead of them, and they play the Florida Panthers next Tuesday, one of the last games of the regular season. So it's going to get really, really interesting. I mean, the Panthers could drop down to the third spot there where the Leafs are right now, and the Leafs could finish, depending how they finish the season and how that game against Florida goes next week, could finish with home ice advantage. But I'm just not sure that's something the Leafs want. I mean, their home and away record are pretty identical. The only difference is, the away record looks a little prettier. That's all it is. And they have a few more points, but it's just because they lose in overtime more than at home. So I wouldn't, say one over the other for sure, especially because their overtime is a lot different in the playoffs, 5-on-5. Like it's just completely different. We all know that. And, there's no shootout, stuff like that. So I don't know. What do you think? Should they start I think it would be easier and less pressure, I think, if they started on the road. That's what I think. If things stay the same and they start on the road, I think that they might find more success in the series, just because then you're coming home to that crowd. And if you have a split series, or if you're up 2-0, I mean, look what Florida did to the Leafs last year. They went up 2-0, completely crushed them. And the Leaf fans have a lot of built up anxiety over the years, right? Like we just want the team to win. And I think it might be better if they start on the road, but let me know in the comments what you think. Should the Leafs be gunning for that home ice advantage in the playoffs? And I mean, next week's game against the Florida, it looks like they're playing Florida, and that game is going to be like game one, quote unquote, like the buffer for the playoffs. It's going to be hard hitting. It's going to be fast paced. It's going to be a fun regular season game to watch at the end of the regular season, which is usually not the case. So let me know in the comments what you think. Should the Leafs start on the road? What do you think? Would they do better starting on the road? Would they do better with home ice advantage? It might help them throughout the playoffs if they are to move on a few rounds, if they have that home ice advantage. And let me know what you think of Auston Matthews. 66 goals. Will he get 70? Let me know in the comments. And Nick and I will see you for another video tomorrow.